Well, welcome to another session of conversations on couches. Today I am with James Collington, future creative arts director here at Discovery Christian Church. James, you're not in San Francisco right now, right?
That I can't tell you that till the end. So if people want to
Ooh.
know, they gotta
Okay, but
wait.
people are definitely going to want to know, is that man on a couch?
Oh, I'm definitely on a couch. We dragged it to the old military base here on the hillside. And fun fact, I've actually slept here before. Um,
In
I'm
that
not even
exact
kidding.
spot.
I'm dead serious. Actually, there's a parking lot, and then one time we were passing through, and it was like too late to get a hotel, and but we needed sleep, so we just stayed in the parking lot. That's a true story. I am
Glad
not
to
here
hear.
though. I'm in Warren, Rhode
Glad to
Island
hear.
right now.
Worst places that you could spend the night for sure.
Yeah, exactly. More
Yeah.
expensive too.
Hey, so for this round of conversations on couches, we're talking about beauty, and I'm looking forward to kind of hearing your perspective on that, particularly as it relates to music, which is one of the things that you're passionate about. But to get started, first question is, in your own words, how do you define this really big concept of beauty?
Sure thing. So for that, I wasn't really too sure how to define it. So I cheated. I actually looked at the dictionary. Um, so I'm going to just read Merriam-Webster's dictionary and then break down what that means for me. That's all the
Sweet,
same to you.
that is great.
And I accidentally clicked out of it. The Webster one is cool. You ever look up a word in the dictionary and then you have to look up more words in the dictionary to understand the first definition? That's what this was.
Yeah, and
But beauty.
I'm a word nerd, so I can spend way too much time doing that. So I get it.
Yeah. So for beauty, it is a quality or aggregate of qualities in a person or thing that gives pleasure to the senses or pleasurability that exalts the mind or spirit. And so
Wow.
I thought that hit the nail on the head. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Can you read that one more time?
I would love to. It is the quality or aggregate of qualities in a person or thing that gives pleasure to the senses or pleasurability that exalts the mind or spirit.
Dude, that's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
I,
Way to
I,
go, Merriam-Webster.
I know. I didn't think it would be so deep. I was like, oh man, I got to marinate on this for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm really excited about kind of teasing that out a little bit. So there's so many different ways, obviously, that we could encounter beauty and have that type of experience that you just read about there. But for you as a musician, and not just someone who plays the guitar, but you write songs, you think about this as a craft. How do you experience beauty, or do you experience beauty through music, through songwriting, through this sort of art that you are crafting?
Yeah, absolutely. So on a receiving end, as a consumer of music, whether it's a quality or plural qualities, I think that can happen in a number of ways, on a micro or a macro level. So on a micro level where you're really looking at the trees instead of the forest, I think sometimes if you're listening to a song or at a concert or something, um, you can just be like, wow, this guitar is just perfect right here. That snare sounds amazing. There's all these little nuances. Oh, did you hear that move the music just made there? And then on a kind of a forest picture, and even arguably a superficial level sometimes where you're just looking at the whole forest, I think sometimes the songs just is like, oh, this is awesome. And you don't have to be a music major to appreciate music. Everybody can appreciate it. And I think sometimes even on kind of a distance view of it, from just everything's here, it's vibing, and the words are hitting home. I love this. Sometimes the words might not even be English. You could not even know what they're saying. And it's just I love this big picture. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've definitely had that experience, when I'm listening to something, or I've really gotten into records recently and kind of rediscovering, music in the vinyl format has been a lot of fun. But then for you, again, kind of more on the craft side of it, as you're writing something, have you had experiences of like, oh man, this is tapping me into something, so much bigger than myself, or this is tapping me into that concept of beauty. What is that moment like? Because I don't write songs, and I have other sorts of creative outlets, but I've always kind of wondered, like, when someone is writing a song, do they think, or as you're writing, do you have that same experience of being at a concert? Like where you're like, oh yeah, like that sounds so good, or that's the perfect line for this part of the song, or I mean, whatever that moment might be. Do you have those experiences, or is it just more of a grind trying to produce this thing and make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you called it a craft, first of all, because I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about art in general is that it's kind of this genius that you're born with.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people are intimidated by that and don't approach it because it's like, well, I picked up a guitar and it didn't sound like Jimi Hendrix. So clearly I don't have uh, the gift. And
Sure.
it definitely is a craft. It's something that you can't do alone. You need people to show you how. At a minimum, you need at least YouTube to show you how. And with that, like it's a process and it's not this genius thing. It's something you're continually working out, continually growing in. And but for me, in terms of what it's like from a songwriting perspective, it usually feels horrible the whole time, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, that's just how I am, though. I second guess myself a lot throughout the process, and you just you don't know what you're going to end up with. Some people equate it to raising kids when you're writing songs. Like, you hope they go to college and end up with these amazing futures, and sometimes they just go down the drain. And
Don't quite make it.
yeah, exactly. And it's just weird because like the economics of songwriting are so weird too. And even in my favorite artists, they'll be like, I was writing the song and I thought it was awesome and it was terrible. And then this song, which I don't even like, but somehow put it on the record, is like resonating with people and doing really well. And so from a songwriting perspective, it's so hard to see what's going on in the moment. And I think it's only, for me, it's one of those things that hindsight will show you what you're dealing with and what you're looking at. And that doesn't mean a well performing song is a beautiful song. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that it's something that has to blow up or get all these streams for it to be something that's beautiful. Because like even in songwriting, there is, or recording, there's a sound design element of it. Um, in that, like if you, that movie Fight Club, like a lot of the punching noises you hear are like people punching like carcasses of cows that are frozen in a basement or something like that, and they record it and dub it in.
Yeah.
And that's to say there's an illusion part of recording. And I think that's part of what makes it beautiful. Like for me, I love just using like these terrible instruments and trying to make something awesome out of it.
Mm.
And like a $200 guitar from China that people put their noses up, it's like, well, I can use that. Or like just these weird things that make no sense. Because beauty, which I like how the Bible kind of defines beauty, where it's not always a physical appearance kind of thing. And with music, it's not always kind of the appearance of it. It's it can be underlying qualities. It can be all these tapestries, or that this mosaic that
Mm.
kind of gets put together of all these broken things, or sometimes these good things that just create something that lifts people up and that resonates with people.
Yeah, that's that's awesome, and I think that leads us into some of my last couple of questions. But just that idea of sometimes it's the messy process that produces this beautiful thing, right? Like that's such an interesting uh, thing from a creative perspective, but again, also from a theological perspective. I mean, this is what God does in our life, right? Taking these messy things and hopefully making something beautiful out of that on the other side. Now, this kind of gets us into the last part of the conversation, and I think the part that for me is maybe the most interesting, because we do live in this moment where there are a lot of things that are ugly, right? Whether it's um, fires that are destroying the state of California, whether it's a disease that's running rampant through our country, whether it's just the behavior of people that is uh, far less than that beautiful ideal that you read from the dictionary earlier. With all these different things going on, I think there's this big question of how do we see beauty in our broken and messed up worlds. And so kind of drawing some analogies there for you in the creative process, how does that help you uh, understand how God works in our lives, or what God is up to? Does it inform your understanding of what God is doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading Isaiah 61:3, which is kind of like the hips verse to write Bible or write songs about right now. And for that, it says, it's kind of one of those verses that starts on a sentence. So I'll skip the first few words because it doesn't make sense. So Isaiah 61:3, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes. Sounds like a Jesus thing. The oil of joy instead of mourning. The garment of praise instead of the spirit of despair. And they will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord and a display of his splendor.
Mm.
And I just love that, because the word beauty is only used once, but it still brings up all these beautiful things. Garment of praise instead of despair, oil of joy instead of mourning, crown of beauty instead of ashes. And I do agree with you that there is kind of like this substitution that happens in the kingdom. For me and even some of my friends in this season where everything's just crazy, um, apart from like the despair element of like, people are dying right now, there's sickness, which I completely validate, but that removed, um, I know some people are just seriously leveling up right now and using this time. Things are changing right now, and whether that be the extra time, like a stimulus package that someone used to make their finances right instead of upgrade their life, there's just all these things that I feel like for me and some of my friends that like they've just been blessed in this season. Even a friend of mine who's both her parents died because of corona. Um, like she's after that happened, she's like, I'm sick of being in the house. I can't live like this. Just drove across country and went on a road trip, which just seemed a little reckless. But um, I just, we wouldn't have had that time otherwise. And I love that she's not just succumbing to kind of like this fear. And another part of the verse that I love as well is where it talks about oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for a display of his splendor.
Mm.
And I love that. I had this philosophy class, and speaking of, so as a musician, dictionary words don't always come too easy to me, and so I thought it was psychology. I didn't realize there was a difference. So I ended up in a philosophy class, which was pretty interesting. And uh, with that, I remember it was Asian philosophy specifically, and then he kind of was talking about God, Yahweh, Hebrew Bible, Jesus, prequel and sequel, if you will. And he was talking about like what's the purpose of us even being created. And I kind of raised my hand. I was like, to give God glory. He's like, why? And I didn't have an answer, but it's kind of like one of those things where after you start thinking about it, uh, it's, and I kind of was just thinking like, like a chair, if it works properly, it gives glory to the creator, the craftsman who made that. And when things work properly, when we work properly, we give glory to God. And then, but we don't always, we're broken. And I think God has that redemptive quality to him as well. I know he does. Uh, and I think that's part of the beauty as well. And I think that gives glory to him as well, because we don't have the final say in messing up our lives, or, like we self-inflict wounds on ourselves. Other times someone just kind of breaks the chair, but God doesn't give up on it, and he redeems it no matter how busted up it is. And I think it's a process too. Like the Bible talks about uh, an oak of righteousness being planted. So when I think of planting, I think of something like a seed or a shrub, and it grows. And I think it's definitely a process too that he kind of starts and is also responsible for growing. And kind of like what he says in Galatians, like what I'll start, I'll finish.
That's awesome.
So,
So
yeah.
one final question for you is so if you are hanging out with someone and they're, lamenting all the ugliness in the world right now, I mean, what would be kind of your one sort of word of encouragement to them, or how would you help someone try to develop the eyes to see this beautiful redemptive work that God is doing, even in the midst of ugliness?
Yeah, absolutely. That's hard. And over the years I've learned it's not always about having kind of that one line zinger. Um,
Yeah.
it really depends. I think sometimes it just, like I think sometimes people come to know Jesus through your love. And that's not to say that you're enough in yourself. I think it's one of those things like as you're receiving God's love, you have love to give. Um, and for me, like sometimes it's not about having the right answer, especially because if someone's upset about something that happened, like say like someone's house burnt down or something, they have every right to be upset. Like I'm not here to try and tell them to look at a silver lining. Like that stinks, and I can totally empathize with you on that. And I think it's truly love that changes hearts at the end of the day. And I think being intentional as well, because how will they know unless they hear, But it's for something that's emotional like that, where you're going through a lot. For me, I'd rather approach it from a point where it's like, how can I love on you? How can I be there for you? Rather than like, did you know the Bible says this kind of thing? Which I
Yeah.
think they're both appropriate, but I would be pretty upset if someone did that to me. And like, I just went through something devastating.
Well, yeah. And so just that, like, um, presence with people, right, can be a beautiful gift to someone who is hurting or struggling in the moment. So I think you're totally right about that. Any final thoughts or any last words that you want to share with our group?
I don't have anything deep. I'm looking forward to hanging out with everybody in a few months, though. The countdown is on. It's going
Yes,
to be awesome.
indeed. Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you for having this conversation on a couch. Um, we love getting to see your face, James, and also hearing a little bit of your thoughts on creativity and beauty and how you find God and all of that. So thank you for taking the time. And yes, we definitely cannot wait for you guys to get here. So see you soon, my friend.
All right, dude. Take care. Thank you.